Welcome back to my YouTube channel, you guys. Today we're going to talk about how to cut trails. You really have to make a game plan. That kind of includes two initial steps. First, you need to survey the area you're going to be putting your trails. So maybe you just bought some land, some hunting land, or maybe you just bought a house and you have a nice wooded area. You need a survey, and the best time of year to do this surveying is in the spring and the fall when there's not a lot of foliage and you can really see a lot of the different elevations and see really what's going on. Now, once you've surveyed, you need to create a game plan of where these trails are going to go. Generally speaking, you're going to cut your trail in a path of least resistance. So as you're surveying, you'll notice spots that it almost looks like a trail wants to go through that area. Whether it's an old, like a deer trail or an animal trail, a lot of times animals will find that path of least resistance for you. And so you'll kind of already know where to put your trail. There's no point in putting a trail in an area like a swamp or somewhere where it's just you're never going to be able to maintain it. Generally, the high elevation, drier areas are the places you're going to be cutting your trail. So that's the first thing I want to mention. Second thing I want to mention is some of the tools you're going to need. These are things from chainsaws, lawnmowers, rakes, shears. All that stuff is going to help you cut the trail. And we'll look at some of that stuff today. Other than that, you know, it's a beautiful fall day. And we have some nice weather. A lot of the leaves are starting to fall off the trees. The bugs are a lot better than they have been. So today is a perfect day to continue this project of cutting some trails. So thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. You can get a good start with a riding lawnmower for really flat ground with not a lot of obstruction. So this area has already been cleared of things like big rocks and fallen trees and stuff. So and basically there's a few steps in the process. The first step is clearing large obstructions from your trail. So usually the first tool you're going to need is either the riding lawnmower or a chainsaw. Obviously, if there's a lot of fallen trees in the middle of your trail, those are going to have to be cut up first. And then the second thing you're going to need, I'll show you right now. Alright, second thing you're going to need, and honestly, if you only could pick one thing that you needed to cut a trail with, I would pick having the shears. These are great because these allow you to cut through those really, cut through the saplings, and anywhere from like, a couple millimeters to a few inches across, you can chop through those. And really, I would say 80% of the trail cutting, depending on where you are, is going to be cutting these saplings out of your way. So when you're walking, you're not having to get hit in the face by these things. So if I could pick one tool to cut trails with, I would pick the shears. They just work so well. So sometimes cutting a trail is going to get a little difficult when you run into anything water related. Like I mentioned before, ideally you're going to want to avoid cutting your trail into areas like swamps and marshes, because in a lot of those scenarios you're going to have to actually make a bridge. Here I have a creek running through the property that actually blocks my access to about 20% of my land, and without building a bridge, I had no way to cut my trail around the creek, so I had to build the bridge. I built about an 8-foot section so I could get across this creek and allow me to continue the trail cutting on the other side of the creek. So it's just another good example of different types of obstructions that can block your trail from getting to where you need it to go. Well, let's face it, you're cutting trails in the woods, and if you're in the woods, there are gonna be trees, so you're gonna have to have a fairly easy way to get those trees out of the way. Now the other option to a chainsaw is you can use a handsaw, but you're gonna double or triple the time it's gonna take you to make your trail. So I recommend getting a chainsaw, even a cheap one like this. Get this big thing out right out of my trail. Imagine doing that with a handsaw. Not fun. Here's another example, tree right across the trail. Had to cut that, and well, could use the firewood, So same thing over here. And really what it is it's the dead and down trees that are blocking the trail. It's not going to be extremely often at all that you're going to cut down a live tree. Your trail should have no problem going around live trees, but with these bigger down trees that can't be moved by hand, unless you have another way to bring your trail around those trees, you're going to have to cut right through them. And you can see here on my trail, I had to do that quite often. So I would say probably the second most important tool for cutting trails is a saw. And that's just the reality if you're cutting trails in the woods. Another thing to be cognizant of is once you've trimmed your saplings, a lot of times you're going to be left with these little tiny sapling stumps, and these are just excellent tripping hazards, especially like in a low light situation. Really easy to snag your foot on that and trip. So you need to make sure that when you're in the grooming phase of your trail making, you go back and you trim these saplings as close to the ground as you can. Sometimes you can actually even rip them out of the ground. You can take an axe and you can cut where the root is, and you can axe that, and then you can just pull this whole sapling stump out of the ground. So very important. The grooming phase is a really important phase. The grooming phase is when you've gotten all the large obstructions, you have the trail plotted out, obstructions out of the way, and the grooming phase is going through and making sure there's no tripping hazards on your trail, and make sure that everything's safe. So this is another thing to be aware about. All right, so we've found a good place for our trail. We've plotted out where the trail is going to go. We've removed the obstructions from the trail, whether that's fallen trees, building a bridge over a creek. We've got a lot of the heavy legwork out of the way. We did a little lawn mowing for our bigger trails. And now the phase we're at now is what I consider to be the initial grooming phase, where basically we're going to take a garden rake and we're going to start clearing a lot of the debris out of the trail. Wanted to give you guys an example of the obstructions we had talked about earlier, where you run into like a marshy area. And you can certainly get your trail started in a marshy area as long as it's not too wet, the same way you would a less marshy area. But what you're going to run into once you've got your trail started, the grooming phase of that is going to be a lot different than the grooming phase of a higher ground or a drier type trail. And I'll show you what I mean. Instead of dirt, hopefully you guys can see we have this very swamp like material, and it's just underneath this type of grass, this marsh grass, is basically muck. And so once you cut the trail and you cut the grass short, you can certainly walk on the trail just fine. It's just hard to get it very flat. But the problem is this marshy grass grows back really easily. So in the grooming phase of your trail, and this will probably be the most expensive part of making a trail, is you're going to have to put a layer down of either gravel, wood chips, or dirt. They'll prevent this stuff from growing back. Now if you have a wood chipper, that would be ideal because you can chip a ton of wood and put it on top here, and it'll prevent this it'll flatten out your trail, and it'll prevent this type of marshy grass from growing back. If you have access to gravel for really cheap, it is awesome to put gravel down on a trail because it really prevents this vegetation from growing back and taking over your trail again. So this is an example of a type of obstruction that you kind of deal with during the grooming phase of making your trail. Obviously, the trail making process is going to really be different from area to area. Depending on your terra firma and what type of topography you have, you may need more tools, less tools, a different strategy for creating your trail system. But I just hope this video gives you guys a little bit idea of what it takes to cut a good trail. And obviously, after everything's said and done, it's using that trail and walking that trail that really helps keep the trail in good shape, because the constant traffic, foot traffic, does help keep everything packed down. So I hope you like videos like these, guys. This is one of my videos in a series of videos we'll do on country living. And I hope to see you guys next time on Atometer. And if you like videos like this, hit the like button. Also subscribe, and I'll be more likely to do videos like this in the future. So thanks again for watching, guys.